I'm trying to go ahead and get this Game of Thrones video done. I promise you I've tried filming this thing like at least a dozen times. I'm trying to keep it between 15 and 20 minutes. I'm having a hard time because you guys know I ramble. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with Season 1, Episode 1, Winter is Coming. For anybody that is not familiar with this story, I have a post up on my website, lilacdream.com, basically explaining the major players that you'll see in this episode. One thing I've found is that people who watch this and give up on it usually do so because there's an overwhelming amount of characters to keep up with in this series. So I figured maybe if I gave you some help with the characters and who they are, that might be, helpful for those people who want to watch it but are like, who are these people? Anyway, let's get started. Let's see if I can keep this down. Anyway, we start off with 3 Rangers from the Night's Watch. They have, on my website, you'll see who the Night's Watch are, what their organization is, yada, yada, yada. These guys have been tasked to go beyond the wall and see what is going on with the wildlings because there's been some strange activity, wildlings disappearing, camps disappearing, that type of thing. So they go out beyond the wall, they split up, and this one ranger finds this whole village of wildlings basically dead, killed. They've been killed by something, and they've just been dismembered and organized in this really weird pattern. So he goes back, finds the other rangers, and takes them back to the location that he saw these bodies at. Also, in the same location, he sees this little girl. She's impaled upon this tree. So she's dead as well. He takes them back to the location of the bodies. The bodies are gone. So one of the other rangers is like, really? Go find the place where these so-called bodies were. He doesn't believe that he saw any bodies or whatever. But they are actually in the right place. And as the guy goes off, he goes off to find the place where he found the bodies. This scary looking thing looms up behind one of the rangers and basically beheads him. Now by this time, the horses know something is going on. They have taken off. They are not here for the shenanigans. They know some tomfoolery is going down beyond this wall. So it was like, no, y'all can have that. We out. And the other ranger that was there that witnessed the beheading by this strange creature, he takes off. I don't blame him. I'm the same way. If I see people running, I don't care. I don't have to know the reason. I don't have to know anything. I am running. I'm out. I'm done. I will figure out later what happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't got time for them games. So anyway, he takes off. He's out or whatever. And by this time, the other ranger, he starts hearing the commotion. The horses running, yada, yada. So he starts running too. And see, he's like me. Like, I ain't got to know what's going on. I just know I need to get the hell up out of here. Anyway, finally he comes across this little girl. She's like kind of walking or whatever, and he stops and he starts towards the little girl, and she turns around, and it's the same little girl that was impaled upon that tree. And now she's alive, she's walking, she's a zombie, she's got these ice blue eyes, and he's like, what the freak is going on? So he takes off. He is done or whatever. He starts off running again, and eventually the other ranger and that creature catches up with him. Like, they're within a short distance of each other, and he turns around and watches as this creature basically beheads this guy and throws it at him. And he takes off. He's done. You would think the creature would kill him, but no, I think he wants him to basically go back and warn everybody south of the wall that something strange is going on in beyond the wall, in the woods and things like that. Something is not right. So he takes off. Now the thing is, with the Night's Watch, basically your pledge is for life. So if you desert the Night's Watch, your sentence is death. And they catch you, you die. So he takes off. And he's done with the Night's Watch. He was like, y'all can have this. I am not here for it. I seen some freaky stuff. I'm gone. He takes off. He deserts the Night's Watch. Finally, the next scene, you go to Winterfell, which is the home of House Stark. The patriarch of House Stark is Lord Eddard Stark. They call him Ned, so that's what we're going to call him, and his wife, Lady Catelyn. And they have 5 true-born Stark children, and then Ned has a son who is a bastard. His name is Jon Snow. Every area has like a specific name for bastards. So if you're born in the north, your last name is going to be Snow. If you're born in like Dorne, your last name is going to be Sand. If you're born in High Garden, it's going to be Flowers. On and on and on, yada yada yada. So the brothers are two older brothers, which they're actually the same age. Robb, who's the true-born son and of Ned and Catelyn, Robb Stark, and his brother Jon Snow, the bastard, is like maybe a few months distance in age, but basically the same age. So they're teaching their brother how to accurately shoot an arrow, and then out of nowhere comes this arrow that perfectly hits the target, and they turn back and they see their little sister, who is grinning, and Bran takes off after her because she basically just upstaged him. And Arya is the youngest daughter of Ned and Catelyn Stark, and she's very uninterested in becoming a lady. Like, she has no interest in sewing or needlepoint or any of that girly stuff that ladies are trained in this world. So then eventually Sir Roderick comes, and Ned gets the news that there's been a deserter from the Night's Watch. So he has to go and basically pass a sentence and mete out justice. So he takes all of his boys with him, except for Rickon, because Rickon is very young. And Catelyn actually balks at Bran going. She's like, he's too young. And Ned's like, he's a boy of, I think he's 10. He's like, he's a boy of 10. He can't be a boy forever. He's going to be a man soon or something, he says. Anyway, so he makes Bran go for the first time. They go, they find the ranger that deserted because of all the shenanigans going on beyond the wall. He is not here for it. And basically he tells them, tell my family I apologize. He said, but this is what I saw. And he's like, I saw what I saw, and whatever. You believe me or you don't. And so Ned believes in the old gods, so in the old ways, and that means whoever passes the sentence has to beat out the justice. So he passed the sentence, so he had to behead the guy. Whatever. Next, he has this little conversation with his youngest, Bran, which I love. Bran asks, can a man be brave if he's afraid? And Ned answers him, that's the only time a man can be brave. And if you think about it, it makes total sense, because being brave means basically being afraid and doing whatever you have to do anyway, even when you're afraid. So, on the way back, they come upon this grisly scene. So basically, this stag here and this direwolf here have killed each other. And this is significant for the simple fact that Ned's best friend is King Robert Baratheon. Robert, I'll show you Robert. That's Robert. That's the king of the Seven Kingdoms. Robert's house sigil is the stag, whereas Ned's house sigil is the direwolf. So, a few yards away from this dead stag is a dead direwolf with the stag's horn through his throat. And they're looking at it. It was like, is this something really strange? Like, this wolf is huge. This is not a normal wolf. And somebody finally remarks it's a dire wolf. And they're like, it can't be a dire wolf. Dire wolves have never been seen south of the wall. Basically, the wall is this huge ice structure that the Night's Watch mans, they patrol. And again, you can, whatever is beyond the wall, is beyond the wall, north of the wall, strange things, the wildlands, but most of civilization lives south of the wall. So Ned's like, there's never been any dire wolves south of the wall. They was like, they don't live here or whatever. Nobody's ever seen one south of the wall. And Jon pipes up and basically says, well, now there's 5, because the dire wolf has had puppies. And he hands one to Bran, and Bran's like, can we keep it? And Ned's like, I'm not really here for that. And finally, Jon points out to him, Father, he's like, there's 5 dire wolves here. You have 5 children. There are 5 Stark children, and the dire wolf is the sigil of your house. The sigil of your house. Your kids are meant to have these wolves. So he relents, but he tells them, you'll feed them yourself, you'll train them yourself. And if they die, you'll bury them yourself. Like, he wants nothing to do with it. So they decide to keep the puppies and take them back home to Winterfell. And Bran is like, well, what about you, Jon? He's like, I'm not a Stark. They kind of just pulled on my heartstrings. But anyway, so they're on their way to leave that area. And Jon hears this noise. He goes back. And there's one more wolf there. And it is a snow white wolf with glowing red eyes. So appropriate for Jon. So he takes him, and that's his wolf, which he names Ghost. So if you want to know which wolf, the names of the wolves, and which one belongs to each Stark child, that information is on my website. So anyway, now we go across the narrow sea to Pentos, where we see the last two Targaryens left. This is Viserys and Daenerys Targaryen. And basically, they were children. Daenerys was like an actual baby when Robert's rebellion broke out, and basically all the other Targaryens were killed, so they had to flee. And they've been in hiding and running all of their lives. Daenerys remembers this one place with this red door that she was really fond of, but basically they've been on the run their whole lives. Right now they find themselves in Pentos with Illyrio Mopatis, who is like a diplomat or whatever. And basically Viserys has pretty much sold his sister into a marriage with Khal Drogo, who is Dothraki, and he has a huge army. Because Viserys wants to use his army to get back to the Seven Kingdoms and take his throne back, because the Targaryens actually have ruled the Seven Kingdoms for eons. I mean, eons, when Robert's rebellion happened, and basically Robert became king. But he wants his throne back. He's like, forget that, the Targaryens is going to come back, yada, yada, yada. So he sells his sister. And at their wedding, these people are giving her gifts. And she meets Ser Jorah Mormont, who is actually from Bear Island, which is a bannerman of the Starks. And actually, his father is the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He got caught like poaching or something, and he was supposed to be punished. I can't remember exactly what his punishment was supposed to be, but he wasn't here for it, so he basically exiled himself and went across the sea. So here he's seen giving Daenerys books about the Seven Kingdoms, because, like I said, they had to flee as she was a child, and she doesn't really know much about it, the history, da-da-da-da. So she's thankful for that, and then somebody else gives her a chest with these 3 petrified dragon eggs. Now, the significance of this is that House Targaryen, the sigil of their house, is a 3-headed dragon. Now, dragons have not been in existence in this world for eons now. They've all died out. However, they used to rule. The Targaryens used to ride them, and that's a big part of how they took over and ruled. The most famous dragon in the Targaryen line was Balerion, and his name, they called him the Black Dread. He was a huge black dragon that just wreaked havoc and destruction. Anyway, so she gets these dragon eggs, and you can see something kind of awaken in her. So next, we go back to Winterfell. Ned is kind of unwinding in the God's Woods, which is where he goes. Sorry for my dog. Anyway, he's unwinding in the God's Woods, which is basically where he goes to pray and unwind and clear his mind, yada yada. And Catelyn comes to deliver some bad news. They got a raven, which is how they communicate with each other. They send ravens with messages in this world, that Jon Arryn is dead. Now, the significance of Jon Arryn is that he is the hand of the king. And again, this is King Robert Baratheon. Now, Robert and Ned are like best friends. They're actually really very much like brothers, because in this world, when men are young, they are usually sent to another person's house to ward with them for a few years to learn different skills, different sword fighting, whatever. I don't know exactly why they do it, but they ward with somebody else for a while. Maybe to see more of the world, to get different culture, I don't know. Anyway, both Robert and Ned warded with Jon Arryn. So they became like brothers, and Jon Arryn became like another father to them. So with Jon Arryn dead, the king is on his way to Winterfell to make a visit because he wants to ask Ned to be his new hand of the king. So you can see the Stark family basically preparing for the entrance of the king. And Brandon actually was the first one to see them coming up the road first, because Brandon is crazy. Not crazy, but Brandon is a climber. He's always been a climber. He's been climbing since like he was really young. He just has this innate ability for climbing. So he's always climbing up the castle walls. He's on the roofs. He's on like crazy. And his mom just like is anxious and like, don't do that, please. But he's never fallen. Never once has he fallen or whatever. So the king and all his entourage arrives. You got King Robert Baratheon. You got his wife, the Queen Cersei Lannister, and then her brother, twin brother actually, Sir Jaime Lannister, and he's a Knight of the King's Guard, which basically means he also cannot, like very similar to the Night's Watch, he can not inherit his family home, and he isn't supposed to have any children. And then you got the youngest, which is Tyrion. He's a little person, but he's, dare I say, the smartest and most clever out of the whole Lannister family. But he's also very into whores and drink, so his father is kind of disgusted by that. So, yeah, those are the 3 Lannister children. And so everybody arrives. Robert wants to go to the crypts to see Lyanna Stark, which was basically why Robert's rebellion was started in the first place. We'll get into that another time. However, Lyanna Stark was Ned's younger sister, and she was actually betrothed to Robert at one point. She ended up passing away, and so he wants to go see her and ask Ned to be hand of the king. And he was like, well, our houses were supposed to be joined some time ago. He said that didn't happen. He said, but I have a son, you have a daughter, let's let them marry and our houses will finally be joined. Anyway, later that night they are having the feast for the king and queen and all of that crap or whatever. Jon is basically not really allowed in there because Catelyn resents him, which I will say Catelyn resents him because, of course, her husband had a son out of wedlock, out of their marriage bed or whatever, who happened to be basically like a few months after Robb. So that kind of is like a sore spot for her. Also, Sansa, she doesn't treat Jon very well, I don't think. She's very snooty and haughty. She's the oldest daughter. And just, no. Anyway, but the rest of them, they love Jon. They treat him like a regular brother, like if he was a full sibling. They don't treat him any different. His father loves him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, like, it's different. He's not treated different than the other kids as a whole, I would say, from any of his other siblings or his father. Now, Catelyn, the mom, she treats him like crap, I think. And Sansa, she's very nasty to him sometimes as well. But other than that, he's treated fine. But Catelyn does not want him at the feast. And so he's out there. He sees his Uncle Benjen. His Uncle Benjen is actually a ranger in the Night's Watch. And Jon feels out of place at Winterfell. He's like, I really don't have a place here. I'm a bastard. I can't inherit. There's nothing for me here. And he wants to go back with his uncle to the Night's Watch and pledge his life to the Night's Watch. His uncle, like, let's wait on that because you're young and that's a huge sacrifice. But Jon is insistent. He's like, I know if you ask father, he will say yes. But Benjen puts that conversation on hold. And then Jon is joined by Tyrion Lannister. And he's like, oh, you're the queen's brother. You're the imp. And he's like, and so Tyrion's like, oh, well, you're the bastard. And Jon kind of gets offended or whatever. And then Tyrion gives him, I think, a piece of the best advice that is given throughout the entire series. And he tells him, I'm going to read it from the book. He tells him, "Let me give you some counsel, bastard," Lannister said. "Never forget what you are, for surely the world will not. Make it your strength, then it can never be your weakness. Armor yourself in it, and it will never be used to hurt you." Jon's like, "Well, what do you know about being a bastard?" And Tyrion answers, "All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes." Which, basically, I think Tyrion is treated horribly by his family as well. The only person that, his nieces and nephews, his niece and nephew love him. His little shit older nephew doesn't love anything. But the only person in his immediate family that genuinely loves him is his brother, Sir Jaime Lannister. His father just can't stand him. He can't stand the thought that he had a child that was a dwarf, and that he ended up basically, his wife passed away during Tyrion's birth. And Cersei, she is on a whole nother level. She just hates him. She can't stand him. She's never liked him. She used to torture him when he was a baby. I mean, it was insane. Anyway, so they have that whole discussion, and then we go inside. We see Benjen and Ned talking, just basically about the ranger that deserted and what happened, yada, yada, yada. And later on that night, they get a knock on the door. Ned and Catelyn, they're about to settle down and go to bed. It's Maester Aemon. He has a raven, a message for Catelyn, and the message is from Lysa Arryn, who is her younger sister, formerly Lysa Tully of Riverrun. And they used to talk in this code or whatever. So she wrote her a letter in code, basically telling her that the Lannisters killed my husband. So she has taken her son and left King's Landing. She not here for the shenanigans, and went back to the Eyrie, which is the home of Jon Arryn in his seat, whatever. So her son is basically the Lord of the Eyrie now, which he's this little weakling, sickly boy named Robert. So she lets her know, she's like, "I don't know what's going on, but the Lannisters, they're going to have you think that this is a natural death or whatever, but the Lannisters poisoned my husband." And so now Ned is faced with, he didn't really want to be the hand of the king, but he feels like now he's obligated to take this position, which he does because, number one, he wants to figure out what the hell happened. Like, why would the Lannisters want to poison Jon Arryn, number one? And number two, he realizes that King Robert Baratheon, his best friend and almost like brother, is surrounded by Lannisters. You got Queen, you got Tyrion, you got Sir Jaime, you have their father Tywin, you have their uncle Kevin. There's Lannisters all over the place. So he feels like he needs to, one, investigate these claims, and two, kind of be there to look out for Robert and kind of be a barrier or protector for him, because he has nobody else. He's surrounded by the very people who are accused of killing Jon Arryn. So at the end of this episode, we see Bran climbing up the walls of Winterfell again. He hears these noises coming from this tower, so he climbs up into this window, and he sees Sir Jaime Lannister and Queen Cersei Lannister. Yes, twin brother and sister. They are in there getting their freaky, sneaky on together, and I am just like, what the freak did I just see? What is going on in this episode? So yeah, the twins have a sexual or love relationship with, I don't even know what to call it. They do have a relationship with each other. The queen's like, he saw us. Jaime grabs him. He's like, "What are you doing? Why are you climbing the walls? Like, what is really going on here?" Whatever. And Cersei just hollering about, "Well, he saw us." And finally, Jaime's like, "The things I do for love." And he basically shoves Bran out the window. And the last thing you see is someone looking up, the wolf, the dire wolf, and you see Bran falling from the tower. And I'm just like, what did I just watch? Like, what just happened? Like, so this is how I'm like hooked on Game of Thrones, because you just do not expect, number one, for twin brother and sister to be getting it on in some random dusty tower room that has not been cleaned in like ages, and for them to be caught and for them to be throwing children out of windows. Like, you just don't expect that. Anyway, so that's the summation of this episode. I'll be back with a very quick summation in person, and that'll be it for Winter is Coming, and we can move on to the next episode. If you have any comments or questions, definitely leave those below. Thanks. All right, dreamers, in summation, season 1, episode 1, winter is coming. We have learned, number 1, that there are shenanigans going on beyond the wall. What is happening? What creature is that? Why is it here? Has it been here before? Next, we find out that there are now 6 dire wolves south of the wall. That's never happened. This is a significant event because there's never been dire wolves south of that wall. Third, we find out that Viserys has sold his sister to gain an army. He means to go back to the 7 kingdoms and get his throne back. He feels like he is the rightful king and heir of the Iron Throne, and he means to have it back. Fourth, we learn that Jon Arryn, former Hand of the King, is dead and has been poisoned by the Lannisters. Why? Why would the Lannisters want to poison this guy? Why would they want to poison the Hand of the King? So we also find out that Ned has accepted the new appointee of Hand of the King, and he means to go to King's Landing and investigate these claims, number 1, and kind of watch out for his friends back, because King Robert is his best friend. Next, we find out that basically Tyrion is wise, and you should just listen to him because he knows everything. No, I'm just playing. But anyway, we do find out that Jon feels out of place, and he would really love to go to the Night's Watch because he doesn't feel like there's anything for him at Winterfell. Even though he's treated well by his brothers and sisters, he feels out of place. He's always felt out of place at Winterfell. So, next, or lastly, I should say, we find out that the queen and her twin brother don't just have a familiar relationship. They have a love and sexual relationship with each other, which is just weird. But yeah, so we find that out, and we also find out that they toss children out of windows. So stay tuned, guys, and I will have a summation of season 1, episode 2 up soon, I hope. And that is it for this one. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. Also, I have, again, that post on my website of the major players and characters for this episode. So if anybody's interested or not clear about anything, you can definitely go check that out, lilakedream.com. I will post it below as well. So that's it. You guys have a good one, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.